this is just a good opportunity to come and introduce myself.
Thank you.
And I'm happy I brought my team. We really have a great team here, about 370 people employed here in Nigeria. Many out in the Northeast. Of course, most are Nigerians, 80% Nigerian, and then some internationals. So, I'll just take a moment to introduce myself a little bit untraditionally, but then we'll get to the point. So I was with WFP up until 2010, including country director in Rwanda and Zambia, and then senior director of policy and strategy in Rome. I left 2010 to go back to Canada, where I was director general. At that time it was called CEDA, Canadian International Development Agency, and then we amalgamated with Foreign Affairs. So I supervised ambassadors from at that level. And then I joined with Howard Buffett, Warren Buffett's firstborn son, as his managing director for Africa. And he's a good friend of mine, and we looked at 10 countries in Africa. That's what he asked me to do, and then really advise them on which country to select in terms of a major investment. To make a long story short, we selected Rwanda, largely because of its performance management capacity. The idea that an investor like that could come in, agree, and it would get done. Not just from agreement at the top, but because the performance management system works all the way from the village level up. And so that was $500 million cash grant investment, which has now been spent in Rwanda, and developed all kinds of infrastructure, major irrigation for agriculture, an agricultural university, skills training for Rwandans, a joint border post with the Congo, and solar power. So quite a lot. So I met Howard when I was thinking about coming to Nigeria. Mm-hmm. We had dinner in Decatur, where he lives. He started the meeting by saying to me, "I just want you to know, David, I'm not coming to Nigeria, but I'm happy to see you again. Let's eat." At the end of the meeting, he said, "Well, I can't get to Nigeria before Christmas. But let's think about that." So you can get the gist of the discussion, and it was really about investor confidence and ideas. After I worked with Howard, and before I decided to come to Nigeria, I was 5 years with the African Development Bank as executive director, working with Adesina, Akin Adesina, your former Minister of Agriculture, on the board there. So that was also looking at major infrastructure investments. So that's one of the things I wanted to flag when I met you, is I'm very much looking at this experience in Nigeria. I've been here a year now, as a potential opportunity to help galvanize investment, particularly in the agricultural space. Meanwhile, though, what we're doing in WFP, as you know, is assisting the government with frontline humanitarian response, a food systems approach. That's how I'm getting to know Sanjo, who's in your ministry as the coordinator for food systems. And we met the VP in Rome in July at a stock taking. I think there'll be another one to get ready for in another year or two. The approach is very much investment oriented. It's not well known that WFP's portfolio is invested in Nigeria. So we're now spending about $200 million a year in Nigeria. $100 million by buying food locally, Nigerian food, largely out of Kano, and another $100 million through e-vouchers or cash transfers, where the people themselves work with small businesses and Nigerian businesses and get the food from the retailers. So it's a pretty big investment every year. I think the highest investment of the UN agencies for sure, and maybe even bilaterally in terms of cash grant assistance. One of the things we've been talking about with your colleagues, which I wanted to inform you about and see about your at least coordination support, is launching in Kano the Global Commodity Management Facility, which is going to be the first one in Africa. There's one in Las Palmas in Spain. There's one in Turkey, in Istanbul. What that is WFP buying food in advance of needs with forward financing, stockpiling it, and then having it available for regional countries as well as the country where it's purchased. So based on the track record of success in Kano, headquarters has agreed to launch this in Kano. And so we've discussed it very much with the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of State of Agriculture. I meet with him regularly. We were formerly discussing with Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, which is my main counterpart, but also agriculture. So now it's being led by agriculture. And we're looking forward to an event in Kano, high-level event, potentially involving ECOWAS countries, following the President's declaration on food insecurity in July, showing that what can be done, largely private sector oriented, because it's about galvanizing the private sector on solutions. So food suppliers, seed suppliers, transporters, the Dangotes and others, and having both a launch of this with international profile, as well as a roundtable, high-level roundtable discussion on solutions through the agricultural economy. And that's where I'll get to my next point, which normally is the first point, which is we're here really because of the conflict in the Northeast. That's a starting point. World Food Program didn't have an office in Nigeria before 2015, unlike other UN agencies. It's because it wasn't seen Nigeria really needed our support, given the state of the economy and the history. But with Boko Haram, with ISWAP, the government asked WFP to come and have a look. And that's where we started, 2015. And so we've built that local purchase capacity and approach for solutions, but frontline support for IDPs in the garrison towns, working closely with Governor Zulum. Last year we met the needs of 2 million Nigerians, so a major program. If it's $1 a day to feed a person, if it's 1,000 Nairas a day to feed a person, which is not expensive, that means we're spending $2 million a day feeding people in the Northeast. And so it is a big operation. I see myself a bit of as a CEO signing contracts with local transporters, suppliers, getting the assistance out. We want to change the approach. We're in the process of working. So it's about out of conflict into solutions. And I brought you this brochure, showed it to the Vice President in Rome, and in passing it around, it just talks about investments that can be done through the food assistance program. Not only cash transfers, but also not only food transfers, the food bought locally, but also we distribute cash and vouchers. And just the way the investment can be done through food production and markets, through the purchases, making sure nutritious food is available. And increasingly, I hope, and that's why I told you the story about Howard Buffett, working with partners on finding out how to deal with the solutions of agriculture, post-harvest infrastructure, seeds and fertilizers, and other programs. And that's where your coordination as well, working with the IFIs, could be very important to talk about. I've been having discussions, not surprisingly, because I come from an IFI, with AFDB, with World Bank, AFDB on the agricultural side, World Bank on the social protection, cash transfer side. But those discussions should be, of course, led by government. I met with Minister Zaneb, who's now at the World Bank, as you know, in DC. Beezy and I met her shortly before she left. I'd like to meet your Minister of Finance, your colleague soon. That's something you could help with, perhaps. and just figure out whether we can have some win-wins as a service provider with IFI.
Come across from a developing world perspective, we are increasingly worried about the capacity of the United Nations system that was put in place to share global prosperity, that is no longer doing so. I had the opportunity of representing Mr. President last week in Kampala at the non-aligned movement.
G77.
So speaker after speaker, the failure of multilateralism and the call that we are not seeking for sympathy. Really, we are looking for equity. We also want equitable access so that prosperity can be shared, so that we, particularly in the developing world, can be seen, especially in the industrialized world, as equal partners who are looking for a break, because sometimes that is missing. I had course again to chair a meeting with a European Union Commission delegation about 3 months ago. And the head of the delegation, who is the EU Commissioner for Partnership, said to me that sometimes the challenge is the the tax to GDP ratio in some of their countries is as high as 30%, 40%, upwards, close to 50, 52% in some countries. That so because of that, sometimes convincing their populace to support countries who are not even able to collect tax from their revenue, it's a Herculean challenge. And I acknowledge that, yes, that may be so. But from this perspective, also, what we see is it took those industrialized countries a system of multilateralism, a system of access to capital that helped them to build the capacity, which is what we want to do. We don't want our children traveling across the Sahara. We want them to travel around the world out of choice. We want them to contribute to global citizenry equitably, properly, and rightly. We don't want to be a burden. We want to be partners to a world that we now appreciate. So why did I say I was excited when I saw your CV that you have worked with the private sector players, you have worked with a development institution, and more importantly, you are now working in a country which maybe gives a view, because you said it to yourself that prior to 2015, the WPF need not to have an office in Nigeria. But maybe the world is not mindful enough that even countries who are doing so well needs capital market access beyond where they are in order to deliver democratic dividend. Because sometimes we are even too poor to appreciate that some of the major challenges that beset us are capital market challenges. Some of the failings that led to WPF being in Nigeria. Because what is Boko Haram? Fundamentally, maybe the most Bishop Matthew Buka, who is the Archbishop of Sokoto Diocese, one of Nigeria's very brilliant thinkers, went bold to say that Boko Haram is not a religious problem, it's an environmental problem. A lake that was supporting over 200 million livelihoods was shrinking rapidly, and the resource base available to the government was not adequate, was not long-term enough to provide measures to recharge the lake or to ensure sustainability. And accordingly, year after year, livelihoods that were once supported by that lake begin to shrink dramatically, and convoluted religious indoctrination exploited that vacuum. We can debate this, but that's a stake, and many of us think there's a fundamental issue. In our Niger Delta area, decades of oil production have polluted the freshwater bodies to the extent that freshwater fishing, which is the joy, the pride of an Ijo or an Agonai person, is no longer available. And maybe we don't have long-term capital that can help us migrate them quick enough from freshwater fishing to aquaculture and controlled fishing. Things that they like to do, they enjoy to do. I mean, in a way, it's the same thing with the banditry in the Northwest. My mother was the only daughter of a pastoral family. And it's a no-brainer to imagine what will happen to society if a 4-year-old, rather than going to school, every day his life involves walking 10 kilometers around animals. Where is his morality? So it's a social contract maybe between him and society has broken down even at that early age. So, but again, this relates to the wider issue: how do we have equitable access to capital that is long-term enough that we are not grant, that we can price and pay for capital that has been available to other parts of the world decades ago, not currently. And that's, to us, the current structure. All across the country are hardworking men and women, most of them able to wake up at 2 a.m. and start their day. The Joes, Elijahs, women in Lagos selling akara. Across the country, farmers, people with poultry, livestock. So what are they looking for? A break so that their effort can be rewarded. They are not looking for grant. They are not looking, sometimes it's simple. They are looking for simple packaging technology. They are looking for infrastructure long term. When I became a governor, we did economics of production in my state. We don't have infrastructure for irrigation. But within 2 years, even with that limitation, we became Nigeria's biggest rice producing state. All our farmers have to pump. In the economics of production we developed in 2015, of the 210,000 that is required to work on a hectare, about 56,000 is fuel cost. Now with fuel cost maybe 4 or 5 times higher, you can imagine. So what do I owe those farmers? If I can have 30-year capital, if I can borrow 30-year money and develop irrigation infrastructure, they will use their second crop to pay. And in a market and a sustainable way. The same thing all across the country. So that's why I said I truly welcome you. I am honored. It may be beyond your immediate mandate, but I think even the IFAD, IFAO World Food Program interface. We want maybe somebody, maybe it's a blessing that we have somebody like you who can help redefine it so that you can portray the view from here that we are really not looking for grants. Last year I visited Borno. The most challenged part of Borno used to be called Damasak. For 14 years there was no production. I was in Damasak together with
December.
yeah. I was there with Damasak, with God bless him, Governor Zulum. We walked for about 8 kilometers around, just feeling, for confidence. So I'm sorry to bore you. I know that, but for me it's a very big opportunity, and to appeal to you to kind of interrogate and to use Nigeria as a, we feel we are okay. We feel honored when people talk about Rwanda. We feel honored as an African country that transited from a painful past to a very hopeful future. And we are happy with all the support. It shows performance, as you call it, performance management at all levels, supported, but Rwanda is our FCT, maybe smaller than our FCT. Right. So maybe there is a concentration of attention, and it's okay, and we are not begrudging them, but it illustrates that if we can put pressure for capital to be made available on equitable terms, we can do much, much better. And we are happy that a lot of promising opportunities are there, but the challenge has been the communication. People who, like as blessed and experienced as you, straddling both worlds, can help both sides so that we communicate better in order to convince capital holders that we are serious. And then also you can help communicate better in the sense that, look, we are not dealing with idle minds there. You are dealing with hardworking men and women who are looking for an opportunity. My farmer can never compete in a world where another farmer have 10 years to pay for a tractor and he has a month to pay for it. He can never compete. No matter how hardworking he is. And the same thing with my sister in poultry or my sister in fish processing. In the ministry here, to come back maybe to the mandate and what I'm sure is of interest, we have a coordinating role, which hitherto has been understated. But this is really, I'm even surprised when you say you have primary relationship with humanitarian and now to agri, which ought not to be so, because your primary relationship should be with the Ministry of National Planning, because Nigeria is a federal state with federal states just like the US and even local government. And the ministry, which the Constitution of the country, Chapter 2 of the Constitution, Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State, mandate with the management of that federalism is the national planning function, which resides in this ministry. So we are responsible for anything from by coordinating bilateral, generating ideas, and making them available to all federal states. Where you are supporting a state Again, our involvement will enable other states or local government to even know that this is a best practice happening elsewhere that we can adopt in our budget practices or planning. So this is like the ministry that is responsible for ensuring that whatever good is coming into the country or is happening is available to all. So really is and we are conscious of that, and the food transformation system reside in the nutritional challenge. And luckily I came to it not just being a governor for the 4 years of my second term. I also had the privilege of serving as the vice chairman National Food Security Council, the chairman being former President Muhammad Buhari. And that is a multi-sectoral, multidimensional body that was set up to help bring the multidisciplinary approach to food security. So I congratulate you on the achievement and the support, and thank you for the support WFP is doing for us. But I also am leaving you with a bigger challenge, which I believe you have the capacity. And I'm very, very eager personally to get to participate. We are looking for infrastructure financing that can pay for itself. And we have the mandate, the national infrastructure master plan, whether in irrigation or in water resources, is the mandate of this ministry. And congratulations on the global commodity management facility and all the good things you have been doing for our country. Thank you very much.